2 years ago, when I was 15 years old, my parents decided to go visit my uncle. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home and hang out with my best friend Alex. Since we lived in a quiet neighborhood and there was very little crime happening here, my parents allowed me to stay home and have Alex come over. My mom left a note on the fridge with all the emergency numbers, and my dad told me to call him if anything happens. I assured them that everything was going to be fine, and that me and Alex were just going to play video games and have some pizza later. They both hugged me and then left. I called Alex and he came by my house about 15 minutes later. We played UFC on my PS4 for 2 hours, and then had some pizza. After our meal, we just sat in my living room, talking about random stuff. Eventually, we started talking about girls. We both had crushes on some older girls, but they didn't even know we existed. Alex then mentioned a website where you could go talk to random people, called Omegle. And he also said that he talked to some girls there. So, we decided to go on Omegle and try our luck. The first 30 minutes we didn't get matched with any girls. Now, we started to get bored, and just when I moved my mouse to exit the site, 2 girls showed up on our screen. They were about our age, maybe a little older. And we started talking to them, but they were just typing. We could see that they were talking, but we couldn't hear them. We told them to turn on their microphone, but the girl said that they didn't have a microphone. We continued talking to them. We said that we were home alone, and so were they. They said that they lived in the same city, and the same area as Alex and I, but we never saw them. And after 15 more minutes, they said that we were cute, and that we should hang out sometime. We were stunned. Girls usually don't want to hang out with us. So Alex gave them his Snapchat username. As soon as he typed his username, the girls disconnected. We were really bummed out. We didn't even get their names. So we just turned off my laptop and went back on PS4 to play some more video games. Some time passed. We were still playing games when Alex took out his phone. He had just received a snap from someone called Anna XOXO99. He opened it, and it was a picture of the 2 girls that we met on Omegle earlier. They were walking on a street, and the caption said, "Can we come over and hang out?" Alex immediately looked at me. He didn't ask me anything. I already knew what he wanted, and I said no, they can't come by my house. He wasn't happy about this, but I said no every time he tried to make me let them come over. Alex texted them, saying that they can't come, and that we should hang out some other time. A couple minutes later, the girls responded, "Can we meet at the park then?" Alex asked me if I wanted to go to the park. It was only 10 minutes of walking from my house, and I said no. He called me a baby and said that he was going to go with or without me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I am a baby. Am I going to pass on an opportunity like this? I looked at my watch. It was 10:30 p.m., so it wasn't that late, and my dad's friend lives right next to the park. So I said I will go with him, but if anything seemed strange, we would immediately go back to my place. Alex agreed, and he sent the girls a snap saying that we were on our way to the park. They replied that they were waiting for us in the children's playground. We go out of my house, and we started walking to the park. And the whole walk there I was thinking, what if something goes wrong? We don't even know these girls, and what if someone else was at the park with them? I didn't want to say anything to Alex because he would probably say that I was a baby, and that I'm paranoid, so I kept my thoughts to myself. After 10 minutes of walking, we got to the park. The children's playground was a little deep into the park, so I asked Alex to ask them to come back to the main entrance, because we were already there. He just said, "Dude, come on," and texted them that we were in the park. And after a minute or so, we arrived at the playground. There was no one there, and I asked Alex, did they respond to our last snap? And he said no, They just opened it. We waited for a couple minutes, but there was no sign of the girls. We were all alone in the park, and I told Alex they were probably messing with us, and that we should go home. But he wanted to stay a few more minutes. A minute passed, and then we heard someone walking behind us. We turned around, and there was a guy dressed in black, standing behind a tree looking at us. He had a creepy smile on his face. I said to Alex that we should go home, and that this was not a good idea. He agreed, and we started walking back home. The whole time I was looking over my shoulder, trying to see if the man was following us. And he was. So I said to Alex to step up. Just when we got to the park's entrance, the guy grabbed my hand and started screaming in some insane way. I was screaming and kicking, trying to get him off my hand. I was calling Alex to help me, but he ran away. The guy started pulling me back into the park. I was screaming as loud as I could. That was when I saw blue and red lights. The guy must have seen them too, because he immediately let go of my hand and ran deeper into the park. I started running back to the direction of my house when a police officer stopped me. I explained everything to him, and he called my parents. The police officer took me to the police station to wait for my parents to pick me up, and my parents came 1 hour after the police told them what happened. And then I eventually told them too. My dad asked them if they caught the guy from the park, and they said they were still looking for him. And when we got home, my parents were glad nothing serious happened. But they were still mad because I left the house to go meet some girls I was talking to online. They told me to go to sleep and that everything will be alright. The next day, Alex came to my house with his dad, and he apologized for running away last night. He also said that when he got home, he opened his Snapchat and there was no sign of Anna XOXO99. It was like she never existed. When I was younger, every year for Christmas, I would drive upstate to my aunt's house along a stretch of highway. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this road. All I know is that it runs near Akron, New York at some point. However, most of the drive is through rural areas with little to no towns nearby. It was the dead of the night, and my groggy self had gotten off a long shift and had to drag my butt to my aunt's house since my extended family was expecting me the following morning. About halfway through the drive, I realized I was low on gas, which irritated me. My brother told me that he had filled it up the day before, so he either forgot to, or was straight lying. I saw an archaic-looking sign for a gas station off the next road. It wasn't an official road sign. Literally a pole with a slab of metal attached to it, with gas off next exit, or something like that, painted on it. That seemed a little sketchy, but people do the same thing with fruit stands on the highway, so whatever. I pulled off the exit on some dilapidated county road through dense woods. The whole thing was creepy and surreal. I kept expecting Leatherface to come out running out of the trees with a chainsaw. Anyways, eventually I came to the gas station and realized quickly it hadn't been open for years. It was all rusted and the convenience store's roof was caving in. The gas pumps had all been taken out as well. I pulled over next to it and checked my gauge. I would probably not make it another half mile before running out. So I called AAA and they said they'd send a truck over. Now I played the waiting game. I left my engine on because when the headlights were off, everything was pitch black, and my paranoid self wasn't sitting next to an abandoned gas station in the middle of a forest in complete darkness. Most of the wait went uneventful, until I sensed movement around the side of the old store, where my lights are pointed. I looked up but didn't see anything more, so I looked back down at my phone. Then, over the sound of the night, I hear someone yell, "Hey buddy, come here," in a demanding tone. I look up and I kid you not, there's a dude standing by the old store looking towards me, illuminated by the headlights. He looked like a run-of-the-mill homeless guy. and I was honestly spooked, but figured he must have been squatting there. Still watching him, I rolled down my window and yelled something like, "Yeah, what's up?" Still mentally crapping myself. I had my foot ready to floor it out of there at the first sign of trouble. "You got any change?" "Nah, I don't. Sorry, man." I look up at him. He has this kind of vacant expression and is standing stiff. Then I see more movement. There are heads. About 20 or so heads peeking around trees beyond the man I'm talking to. I can't see them clearly at all, but they are all definitely people, literally just heads, staring in my direction from around the tree. I see another guy beginning to walk from around the gas station, and then I turned around and sped off. I got as far away from that place as my tank could carry me, and updated AAA on my location. The driver came back over and filled me up, and I didn't say anything. But after he left, I went to call the cops, so I called the nearest town sheriff department. They said they'd send a trooper over, and I gave them the location. When I got to my aunt's house, they called me back and said whoever was there was gone. But they could tell a large number of people had been living there for quite a while. Blankets, canned food, the usual. The whole situation still freaks me out. But frankly, I can consider myself lucky that I'll always have such a creepy story to tell. And I'm just glad nothing bad happened. Yeah, and to creepy dudes at the gas station, let's not meet. Like many, I've been quarantining in my house in California, mostly spending the time hopping on work calls and gaining weight. One night last month around 10:30, I was eating dinner. I live in a rural area where houses are spaced further apart, and the main town square has got to be at least 2 miles from where I live, i.e., the police department. So I get a knock on the door. Odd at this hour, but I open it anyways, expecting that it's a package. There are 3 dudes in these dirty yellow hazmat suit type things with face shields, and I was taken aback, and mumbled something like, hello? One guy holding a clipboard introduced themselves as a disinfection team, sent by the county, and that groups of them were going to be going around towns to inspect houses and make sure that they are sanitized, etc., etc. I wasn't buying it, so I asked them to give me a minute and called my neighbor. I asked him about the disinfection team, and he told me it could be a scam, and to ask for a warrant or call the cops. I went back to the door to ask for a warrant, and the men were gone. I walked out into my driveway, baffled, and glanced down the street. No cars in sight. I contemplated calling the police, but I didn't think it was worth it. I went back inside, locking all the windows and heading upstairs to watch some TV. About an hour later, I was still watching TV and heard some things fall over in my backyard on the patio. It was clear as day because the patio was below the bedroom window, to my left, which was wide open. I was too lazy to check it out, so I stuck my head out the window to look around, and nearly died on the spot when I see one of those guys in the hazmat suits messing with my back door. I reacted quickly, yelling, "Hey!" Insert some choice words here. "The cops are on their way." That sure got his attention. He yelled something unintelligible and hopped the backyard fence. I saw the 2 other guys running around the side of the house. They all hopped the fence and ran off into the woods beyond my house. I picked up the phone from the nightstand and dialed my local police, explaining the situation as I could still see their yellow figures disappearing into the woods. The cops came and we made a creepy discovery. The 2 guys who had been around the side of my house had been trying to pry open my dining room window with a crowbar. I asked them if they could check it for fingerprints, and I kid you not, one of the officers responded with, "What do you think this is, the CIA?" Honestly, that pissed me off. It seems like small-town police officers don't really give a crap, at least the ones where I live. And the men had been wearing gloves anyway, so it didn't matter. Let this be a lesson. I hope no one else will fall victim to this kind of scam.
This happened to me quite a while ago, but I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. I'm a female, and back then I was working in a call center. I used to work the night shift there occasionally. Due to the fact that the company wasn't a big one, more of a startup, the bosses could only justify one employee working the night shift alone. It was tough. I remember calling my boss regularly since I was so unsure of what to do alone there at night. It brought me on the verge of tears sometime. I remember on one occasion crying on the phone to him. After some time, I managed to get to grips with the night shift and my role in the company. It was a couple months into my employment that the day in question arrived. That night everything was going smoothly. I was working with a part-timer and he came over to my desk to let me know he was leaving. During the day shift, the call center is always filled with people and it gets noisy, but at night the call center is deathly quiet and is quite unsettling. All the lights are off except for the one section you are working in. The rest of the building is dark. It is incredibly isolating. Sometimes faxes would come through from a customer. I would race over to the fax machine, grab the paper, and run back into the safety of the light. I was always scared someone would be hiding behind one of the desks or the machines. It got to about 1 a.m. and I was tidying everything away, relieved that another night shift was finally over. I put the key in the door to unlock it and let myself out when I heard a strange noise. It was the sound of water, like a toilet flush or something. It came from behind me. I stared towards the toilets behind me. Instantly I thought, that's just the part-time worker, but then I realized a second or two later that he had gone home about 2 hours ago. I tried to calm myself. I thought perhaps that might have been another employee from another company on the floor below. I knew deep down there wasn't anyone else in the building working this late though. And I knew that sound came from the toilets on my floor, the toilets which still had their lights out. I stood there staring at the toilet's frosted window, thinking about what to do next. Then I remembered something else. The toilet has a sensor. You have to hover your hand in front of it to activate the flush. That meant there is definitely someone in there. There is no doubt in my mind. I froze on the spot. I didn't want to make a sound. Then I bolted. I didn't want to find out who or what was in that bathroom. I ran downstairs and out of the building, and I made sure I locked the door. A couple of weeks later, I thought that I was overworking myself in this job, so I decided to leave the company. I thought the stress and the late nights might have made me hallucinate that night. My colleagues threw me a leaving party. I heard from one that there were rumors about strange goings-on in the call center. Things being moved at night, other strange sounds coming from different areas of the call center. They thought they might have a ghost in the building. Some of the employees were saying that they had seen a woman in white in the bathroom. I was skeptical, but it was interesting. A few months later, I heard from the same colleague that the mystery of the call center and the white woman had been solved. Apparently, a homeless person was creeping into our building through the vents. The building was quite old. My colleague apprehended her and she attacked him. She may not have been sound of mind, I'm told. It's pretty creepy knowing that my fears were justified while working alone and that there was actually someone in the toilet that night. I'm really glad I got out of there when I did. I work in a nursing home. About a month ago, an elderly woman who had been diagnosed with a mental disorder was introduced to our care home. She seemed perfectly coherent after we spoke a little. I was surprised by the diagnosis, to be honest. She was really switched on for her age, which was 75. Her responses to questions and her conversation was quite articulate. It got to the point where my colleagues and I were seriously doubting her diagnosis. She was a total joy in her first morning at our care home, I had heard as I came in to work the night shift. At about 2 a.m. the nurse call button was pressed from her room. I went to check in on her and she simply said, "I pressed that by accident, I'm sorry." I told her not to worry and I thought nothing of it. I went to attend to my chores down the hall. Not 10 seconds had passed when the call light appeared for her room again. Another nurse responded to her call. I remained in earshot for a moment. I was in the corridor and her door was closed. Because it was so late and there was no other noise in the home, I could hear every word they were saying. My colleague asked for the reason why she rang the nurse bell. The lady asked, "That man before," she said. My colleague said, "Oh yes, what about him?" "He frightens me. He has two faces, you know. He really frightens me," the old lady replied. "Oh," my colleague said. "She has a beautiful face, but don't let her trick you. She wants to kill you. If you look in her eyes, she will eat you." "But he is a male staff member, perhaps. Can't you see her? She's standing right there," the lady shouted. It was quite alarming to hear the lady, which had been so pleasant, now shouting in the dead of the night. It felt totally out of character. She sounded completely exacerbated, too. I knew that there were no windows or doors that anyone could be peering at her through, since we did not have windows in our bedroom facilities, and the only door was the one I had entered in earlier. Since my colleague wasn't aware that I had been eavesdropping, she came out of the room, saw me, and stepped back in shock. I said nothing and carried on walking down the hall. It got to around 3 a.m. and it was time for my break to sleep for a couple of hours. When I woke up in the morning, that lady was completely back to normal again. When I spoke to her, she seemed to harbor no ill feeling towards me, nor did she seem distressed. I didn't think much more of it, and when quitting time came, I went home as usual. However, when I came back to work 2 days later, things had changed. The lady had been pressing the nurse call button every hour since 1 a.m. for the last 2 nights, stating that there was someone in the room with her, and she couldn't stand them staring at her. She couldn't sleep. She said that someone was hanging from the ceiling staring at her. She had been so escalated it had been difficult to calm her down. This had been ongoing for a month. She rings the bell complaining of someone in her room staring at her. Whenever I answer the call, she always says she rang the bell by mistake. Then she will tell the next member of staff that the woman who answered the call was frightening her. Just want to throw it out there, I look nothing like a lady, by the way. I think this lady is frightened of death, and it's manifesting in her everyday life. She is seeing death. I still maintain that she is the most coherent of all patients we've had in our facility. It's really difficult to believe that she is mentally ill until night falls. Can she truly see something we can't? What does it mean for me if she can? I think about these things now and then, but mostly I pray for her. I pray for the day that she is not tormented by whatever comes to her at night.
If you enjoy Creepy Nights content, let us know. Give us a subscribe, a thumbs up, or in the comments, let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Also, check us out on Instagram for more horrifying content. And if you have any stories of your own that you would like me to personally narrate, check out our subreddit. Until next time, my friends.